Mom gave my inheritance to my brother and said, "He deserves it more, you'll waste it." I said, "Thanks for the motivation," and left. 2 years later they begged me when It happened on a Tuesday. I remember that because I always hated Tuesdays, nothing good ever came from a Tuesday. That morning, I had driven 3 hours back to my hometown to settle what I thought would be a straightforward meeting about the inheritance. Mom had called a week prior, asking me to come sign some documents. No urgency, no warmth either. Just cold logistics, like always. Dad had passed 3 months earlier. It still felt unreal. How a man could work his whole life, break his back to build something from nothing, and then vanish like he'd never been. I was the youngest of two. My older brother, Brian, was the star, the one they always pinned their hopes on. I was the footnote. The also ran. But I showed up. I always did. When I walked into that living room, the one with the same brown plaid sofa we'd had since I was 12, Mom was already seated at the table, a folder in front of her, her face tight. Brian leaned against the fireplace, smug as ever, sipping coffee like he'd already won. Mom didn't waste time. "We've decided," she said, sliding the folder toward me. "Your father's assets, all of it, the house, the savings, the insurance, are going to Brian." I blinked. "What?" "He deserves it more," she said without flinching. "You just waste it." I felt the air leave the room. Not because of the money, not really, but because of the finality of it. The message. The verdict. Brian didn't say a word. He didn't have to. His smirk said enough. I looked at her for a moment, waiting for the punchline. Waiting for some flicker of love, of fairness, of decency. There was none. I stood slowly. Folded the folder shut without even reading it. Looked them both in the eye. "Thanks for the motivation," I said. Then I turned, walked out the door, and never looked back. I left town that day with nothing but a duffel bag, an old pickup truck, and the kind of pain that doesn't just sting, it lingers. Sits in your chest like a cinder. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just drove. 3 hours later, I parked outside a dingy little rental on the outskirts of the city, the kind of place with thin walls and creaky plumbing. I signed a month-to-month lease and moved in that night. No plans. No backup. Just one idea burning in my mind. Prove them wrong. I took every odd job I could find. Roofing. Warehouse overnight shifts. Freelance data entry during lunch breaks. I didn't sleep much. I didn't talk to anyone unless I had to. I was too busy turning every second into something useful. I'd wake up before dawn, lace up my steel-toe boots, and head out before the sun even cracked the skyline. In the evenings, I'd change into decent clothes, sit at my computer, and teach myself everything I could: finance, marketing, sales psychology, coding, real estate. Whatever I could find for free or cheap. YouTube, online courses, forums, you name it. I didn't go out. I didn't celebrate birthdays or holidays. I just worked. Hustled. Saved. Every dollar counted. I kept my overhead low and my ambition high. 6 months in, I used my savings to buy 2 broken vending machines from a guy on Craigslist. Cleaned them, stocked them, and convinced a local office to let me put them in their lobby for free in exchange for maintenance and refills. They didn't expect much, but neither did I. I just wanted the foot in the door. Within 2 months, I bought 4 more. By month 9, I had a vending route that was pulling in steady cash on top of my day job. I filed for an LLC, built a tiny website, and pitched local businesses with laminated brochures I printed in my kitchen. I was becoming someone no one in that living room would have recognized. But not everything was fire and grit. There were nights I stared at the ceiling in that tiny room and wondered if I was really winning. Nights where I missed having a family, even a broken one. Where I questioned if the mountain I was building was just a monument to bitterness. But then I'd hear her voice again. "He deserves it more, you'll waste it." And I'd push harder. By the end of year 1, I had a vending business, a steady freelance income, and a 5-figure savings account. More importantly, I had something I'd never had before. Control. And I wasn't slowing down. Year 2 was different. By then, I had enough capital to stop thinking like an underdog and start thinking like a strategist. I automated the vending business, outsourced the refills, got tracking software, even wrapped the machines with branding. What once took me weekends now took me 2 hours a week. That gave me room to breathe and plot the next move. Real estate. It started with a duplex on the edge of town. Rundown, cheap, and about as glamorous as a mud puddle. But the bones were good. I used the last of my savings as a down payment and spent evenings scraping wallpaper, fixing toilets, painting until my hands cramped. I lived in one half and rented out the other. The rent covered the mortgage. Suddenly, my cost of living dropped to near zero, and my income kept climbing. I was stacking wins in the dark, quietly, while everyone who ever doubted me thought I'd disappeared. I remember one night, sitting in the empty unit after laying tile, staring at the walls with my hands stained in grout. It hit me that no one was going to clap for me. No one was going to show up and say, "We were wrong." That apology? It was never coming. So I stopped waiting for it. I started documenting everything. Every cent earned. Every small milestone. I had a notebook labeled Motivation, a twisted little trophy cabinet full of goals hit and reminders of where I started. June 3rd, duplex cash flows plus $200/month. Screw you, Brian. August 14th, broke $50,000 net worth. From $312 to this. In 18 months. October 1st, paid off my truck early. Who's wasting money now, Mom? That notebook was my secret revenge. No loud moves. Just quiet domination. The thing is, success gets noticed eventually. Even when you try to keep it small. I didn't post about it. Didn't brag. But words still got around. A friend of a friend asked me to speak at a local entrepreneur meetup. Then a client from my freelance gig mentioned my vending business in a LinkedIn post. Suddenly, people who used to forget my name were so proud of me. And then came the message. From a number I hadn't seen in 2 years. "Hey, we need to talk." It was from Brian. I stared at the message for a long time. "Hey, we need to talk." There was no context. No apology. Just that. Like we were picking up where we left off, as if 2 years of silence and betrayal could be skipped over with a simple, "Hey." I didn't reply. The next day, I got another message. This one wasn't from Brian. It was from my mother. "Please call me. It's urgent." She hadn't used the word please with me in years. My stomach turned, but not with sympathy, more like curiosity. I called her from a burner app, just in case I'd regret it. She picked up on the first ring. "Oh, thank God. Honey, it's your brother." I didn't say anything. Just listened. "He's in trouble. He made some bad investments. Got in over his head. He needs help." Of course he did. Turns out Brian had burned through the inheritance in less than a year. First it was a crypto startup his college friends swore was the next big thing. Then it was a gambling habit he called high-risk investing. He bought a Tesla, leased an apartment downtown, and started dating someone who thought budget was a slur. The money evaporated. By the time my mom realized what was happening, he maxed out every credit card, sold the car, and had loan sharks calling her landline. The golden boy had tarnished faster than a dollar store trophy. "He's ashamed," she said, her voice thin. "He wouldn't call you himself. But we don't know what else to do." I leaned back in my chair, staring at the ceiling of my now upgraded 2-bedroom condo. She kept talking. "You always land on your feet. You're so smart with money. Maybe you could loan us something. Just to help Brian get back on track." There it was. The same woman who said I'd waste it. Now begging for my help to save the son who did. I didn't raise my voice. Didn't say anything cruel. Just asked calmly, "And why should I?" She went quiet. For the first time in my life, I think she realized I was no longer the boy in the background. I was the man on the other end of the line. The one holding the cards. I told her I'd think about it. Then I hung up. And smiled. It was my move now. I didn't rush. That night, I sat by the window of my apartment with a glass of water, watching the city move beneath me. I thought about the version of me they remembered, the quiet one, the one who never made a scene, who always stayed 2 steps behind Brian, waiting for scraps. They thought I'd changed because I had money now. But the truth was, I hadn't changed. I just stopped asking for permission to matter. So the next morning, I wrote out a list. Not just any list, a contract of sorts. If they wanted help, they'd get it. But on my terms. And I wasn't going to pretend to be kind about it. I printed 2 copies. Neatly typed. Legally sound. Cold as ice. Then I called her back. "Meet me tomorrow," I said. 10 a.m. office address is in the email I'll send. No explanations. Just control. They showed up early. Brian looked smaller than I remembered, not physically, but somehow, diminished. His button-down was wrinkled. His eyes were puffy. He barely looked at me. My mother still wore that practiced matriarch expression, like she was doing me a favor by showing up. We sat in the glass conference room of a co-working space I'd rented for the hour. No distractions. No drama. Just business. I slid the papers across the table. "What's this?" she asked, her voice brittle. "Conditions," I said. "For the help you're requesting." She began reading. Her mouth opened slightly, eyes darting down the page. Brian didn't even look at his copy, just stared at the table. Condition 1: Brian would work for me, starting immediately. Entry level. Hourly pay. Cleaning vending machines, restocking inventory, driving to refill locations. He'd wear a name badge and clock in just like every other employee. No special treatment. No exceptions. Condition 2: If he quit or missed more than 2 shifts in the first 60 days, the loan would be cancelled and debt collection would begin. There would be interest. Penalties. A personal guarantee co-signed by my mother. Condition 3: My mother would sign over the deed to the old family home, the one Dad had worked so hard for. In exchange, I'd offer a small loan to help them stay afloat. Just enough to clear the most urgent debts. But the house? That would be mine. She dropped the papers halfway through. "You can't be serious." "I'm not joking," I said flatly. "You wanted help. This is help. You're punishing us." "No," I said. "I'm making sure you feel what I felt. Powerless. Unheard. Unchosen." Brian finally looked up. His voice was barely audible. "Do I really have to do that kind of work?" I stared at him for a long moment. "You were handed everything, Brian. You threw it away. Now you earn it back. Or you don't. Your call." They didn't sign that day. But 3 days later, the paperwork arrived in my inbox. Signed. Initialed. Sealed. The first day Brian showed up to work, he was 15 minutes late. I didn't say anything. I just handed him his uniform shirt, the same one all my employees wore, navy blue with Evervan stitched in simple white letters across the chest. Below it, a plastic name badge, Brian, Route Associate. He stared at it like it was a joke. Like any second now, I'd laugh and say, "Just kidding, big bro." I didn't. I handed him a checklist and the keys to the supply van. "We've got 5 stops today. Machines need cleaning, restocking, and cash counted. You'll ride with Marcus. He's been doing this a year. Listen to him." Marcus, a guy 5 years younger with twice the discipline, looked him over once, nodded, and said, "Let's go." No special treatment. No shortcuts. Just the work. Over the next few weeks, I watched Brian drag himself through tasks he used to think were beneath him. Wiping spilled soda from sticky trays, counting dollar bills under flickering warehouse lights, hauling crates of snacks in 90-degree heat. I never yelled. Never humiliated him publicly. I didn't have to. The uniform did that for me. At the end of every day, he'd clock out on the app, his hours logged, his break times monitored. Every Friday, he'd get a direct deposit just like everyone else. $16 an hour. Taxes withheld. No bonuses. The pride drained out of him in layers. I saw it in the way he started arriving on time. The way he stopped arguing with Marcus. The way he avoided my eyes whenever I stopped by the warehouse. My mother called once to check in. Asked if he was doing well. I told her the truth. He's learning what work feels like. She didn't like that answer. That weekend, she came to my office unannounced. She had aged more than I expected. Her voice, though still sharp, now had cracks in it, like the edges of something once solid beginning to give way. "You've made your point," she said, sitting across from me. "Have I?" I asked. She sighed. "He's not built for this. He wasn't built for accountability either," I replied. "But I'm giving him the chance to construct something. Why do you hate us?" It wasn't anger in her voice. It was something softer. Something close to fear. I leaned forward. "I don't hate you," I said. "But I remember everything. Every word. Every silence. Every time you chose him while I stood in the background." She looked down. "I'm not here to hurt you," I added. "I'm just making sure you feel the balance. That's all." She didn't argue. She just nodded. Then left. And for the first time in my life, I think she understood what it felt like to have to earn your place. 3 months passed. Brian kept showing up. That surprised me. At first I assumed he'd quit, storm off one day in a tantrum and declare he was too good for grunt work. But he didn't. Maybe it was pride. Or desperation. Or maybe, and this was the strangest possibility, he'd started to understand. He still didn't say much. He kept his head down, did the routes, followed the checklist. Never complained. Not to me, anyway. I started getting reports from Marcus. "Honestly? He's not bad. Quiet. Slower than most, but focused." That was a sentence I never thought I'd hear about Brian. Meanwhile, my mother kept her distance. The house transfer went through cleanly. She still lived there for now, but it was mine. The deed said so. The balance of power had shifted. And she knew it. The first property I ever owned that wasn't an investment was the very house she thought I'd never be responsible enough to deserve. Sometimes I'd visit to check on the place, walk the perimeter, make notes about repairs, maybe plan a light renovation. She'd peek through the window like a tenant waiting for the landlord. She never offered coffee. I never stayed long. One afternoon, Brian showed up at my office after his shift. Still in uniform, sweat on his collar. He stood in the doorway awkwardly. "Can I talk to you for a second?" I nodded. Didn't say a word. He sat across from me, fidgeting with the corner of his badge. "I know I screwed things up," he said finally. "Not just the money. Everything. I didn't really earn any of what I was given. But I thought I was supposed to get it. You know? Like, that was always the deal." I didn't interrupt. He took a breath. "This job. It's humbling. And you didn't have to give it to me. You didn't have to give me anything." I leaned back. "That's true." He looked up, eyes tired. "Why did you?" The question hung in the air for a second. And I told him the truth. "Because you needed to understand what value feels like when it's earned, not handed to you." He nodded slowly. Didn't argue. "Do I still have the job?" he asked. I studied him for a moment. "Show up Monday," I said. "Same time." He stood up. "Thanks." As he walked out, I didn't feel triumphant. I didn't feel revenge. Just a strange, bittersweet peace. Like the scales had finally been balanced. And for the first time in years, Brian walked out of the room smaller in ego, but maybe taller in something else. Owning the family home changed something in me. Not because of the bricks or the foundation or the backyard where we used to play, but because of what it represented. When I walked through those rooms now, I didn't see memories. I saw lessons. Echoes of silence. A hallway of unspoken favoritism. A kitchen table where decisions were made without me. I didn't renovate the house out of revenge. I did it because I wanted it to become mine in more than name. New paint. New floors. New locks. And I didn't do it alone. Brian helped. At first, it was part of his job. I gave him a list: tear out the old carpet, haul away the junk, patch the holes in the drywall. He never complained. He just worked. But over time, it shifted. He started asking questions, suggesting tile choices. One day he brought lunch for the crew without being asked. We never talked about the past. Not directly. But the way he scrubbed grout or sanded down the banister told me everything I needed to know. He was trying. As for my mother, she moved out a month after the deed changed hands. I offered her the option to rent one of my smaller units at cost. Not as an insult, just a boundary. She declined. She moved in with her sister 2 towns over. We haven't spoken since. And I didn't chase the conversation. Some people spend their whole lives waiting for an apology. I spent mine building a life where I didn't need one. It was Brian who asked. "Would you have dinner with me sometime?" he said one afternoon, wiping dust off his hands after finishing drywall in what used to be our dad's office. I hesitated. Not out of anger. Just history. "Not at the house," he added quickly. "Somewhere neutral." I agreed. We met at a small diner on the edge of town, half booths, cracked vinyl, the kind of place where the waitress knows everyone by name and the coffee is always a little burnt. Brian was already there, sitting in the corner, out of uniform for once. He looked older. Not just physically, something in his posture had changed. Like he'd finally gotten tired of pretending to be bigger than he was. We didn't talk about the job, or the house, or the inheritance. Instead, he told me about things I never expected to hear. About how, after Dad died, he felt like he was supposed to step into some crown he never earned. How Mom always made him believe he was destined to succeed, and how that pressure turned him into someone fake. Reckless. Empty. "I didn't know what to do with it all," he said, stirring his coffee. "So I spent it like it wasn't real. And when it was gone," he smiled faintly, "that's when I finally showed up for my own life." He didn't ask for forgiveness. He didn't beg. And that, strangely, made it easier to forgive him in my own quiet way. "I won't forget," I said. "But I'm not angry anymore." He nodded. "That's more than I deserve." We didn't hug. No movie moment. Just the sound of a waitress asking if we wanted dessert, and the clink of coffee mugs. But I left the diner that night with something unexpected. Closure. Not wrapped in apologies or tears. Just 2 brothers sitting in the aftermath of everything they'd broken. Trying, maybe, to build something that wasn't made of inheritance or expectations. Just honesty. They thought I'd waste it. That I'd disappear. Instead, I built an empire in silence. Brick by brick, machine by machine, hour by hour. Now I don't gloat. I don't need to. The house is mine. The business is thriving. And the people who once looked down at me, now look up when I enter the room. I didn't become cruel. But I became undeniable.